Is Scott Galloway becoming a spiritual guru? Not exactly. However, part of what he does in Notes on Being a Man is to veer sharply into spiritual reverie at key points in a way that softens the core contradiction of his advice, which is capitalism is hard, tough, unfair, and broken, but you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make it work. This is a dead end message. And perhaps to compensate, Galloway goes into extended reveries on the present moment, on the centrality of love or the smallness of the ego. Now, the way I see it, he's providing relief, but also an apology for and absolution from the system that made him more than $100 million. Now, Galloway says he's an atheist, but a big part of this book is competing for that manosphere space that is dripping these days with religious obsessions. He says, quote, "I consider myself a scientist. Religion is easy to poke holes in and contrary to academia." But he also says, quote, "I've come to esteem the role religious institutions play in society and people's lives." In that vein, he says, "I'm getting older, wanting to serve in the agency of others, to be part of something bigger, and to register comfort." Now, for the most part, he doesn't say much about the community or solidarity possibilities of religious life. Maybe because he doesn't have experience with these things, or maybe because what he really wants is consolation more than social insight. His contemplative pings at spirituality are private, they're therapeutic, they're disconnected from structural analysis, kind of like the rest of the book. And this aligns with liberal-centrist uses of spirituality as a kind of insulation rather than moral responsibility. I think it's ironic that Galloway basically demonstrates the Marxist analysis of religion. Marx said that religion was a form of social control that encouraged emotional surrender to the status quo and allowed people to endure conditions that are senselessly cruel. Now, Galloway's running this exact software because, as an insider tycoon, he is able to name capitalism's violence. Instead of confronting it, he really seeks a kind of personal transcendence. It's important to recognize what landscape this is speaking into, because we know how the MAGA movement has been aided by white Christian nationalism, which is now morphing into Charlie Kirkian Christofascism. But how do liberals and centrists use spirituality? In my view, they use it primarily to console themselves inside a bubble of peace, floating through a world that they've given up on changing. Now, here's why this bothers me. Galloway is capable of real flights of beauty. Listen to this, quote, "Supposedly, each of us has in us bits of every material present at the dawn of the universe. Our matter will disperse. The question is, how do you make people feel? When people encounter you, do they feel insecure or inspired? Do they feel joy, harmony, love?" So it's beautiful, but it's also just hanging there like a sugar pill with no real food on offer, no realization that if you are ensnared in the values and metaphysics of capitalism, your spiritual journey might be to change that instead of seeking consolation within it. Now, because the context is fatherhood and mentoring younger men, there is a thorn in this rose. And that's that liberal or centrist parenting wisdom can sound as good as any wisdom while abdicating on the moral demands presented by the world. Marx talked about the opiate, and here it is. Guys like Galloway offer good pain relief for the wounds they don't really want to stop inflicting on themselves and others.